What's up, everyone? This is Kian, and welcome to my next podcast in the series that I'm making to help you guys learn English faster and to prepare for your IELTS test a lot more effectively. And as a result, your IELTS band score will be dramatically improved. Right? So today we're gonna talk about life in the countryside. So, do you think that life in the countryside is easier and you enjoy a higher quality of life? Or do you think that living in a city is actually more beneficial? And in today's podcast, we're going to talk about it. I hope that my podcast is going to shed some light on the matter. Right? So, choosing where to settle is very important. It is a very important decision in life that everyone has to make. I think it is reasonable to choose to live in the countryside. If you are kind of a laid-back person, you don't want to be caught up in the rat race, and you just like to enjoy the tranquility and the peacefulness of the countryside. And of course, it's better to live in the countryside, right? And for people who are used to the high-tech lifestyles that city residents often lead, and for these people, it is mind-numbing actually to live in the countryside because of the slow pace of life here. When I get back home, I just can't really wrap my head around the fact that people actually go to sleep at about 9 p.m. Can you believe that? At 9 p.m. At 9 p.m. I am still teaching, and for many people, they haven't even left to work yet, let alone go to sleep. So basically, it is gonna be really boring for people who are used to the fast pace of life in urban areas. That's why many people actually say that rural villages are just a backwater, and these places have much fewer recreational activities and amenities in the form of shopping malls or cinemas. You can hardly ever find a cinema in the countryside. I think in my village, I have to travel for about 5 kilometers to the nearest cinema, and it is the only cinema in town in 10 kilometers radius. It just it's beyond me. I can't believe it. But when you think about the citizens' need, you will actually understand why people just don't go to those places, because they prefer staying at home watching news or watching TV shows rather than going to cinemas. And cinema goers are often young people, and as soon as they reach the age of 18, they actually go to cities where universities are concentrated there and get their education there. So basically, very few people actually go to cinemas. And you know what? The nearest hospital is actually 20 kilometers away from my home. Just think about when I have an accident, or when something bad, something terrible happened, or if there was a flood or an earthquake happening, and people just couldn't get to the nearest hospital in time. So it is kind of dangerous to live in the countryside when you think about the availability of healthcare facilities. And it goes without saying that we want the best for our children and our loved ones, especially our older members in our family. So many people actually move to cities or to places where they have better education and healthcare institutions, because we just want our kids to receive the best possible education, and we just want our grandparents to receive the best possible health care, right? So obviously the scarcity of these essential facilities actually puts people off of the idea of residing in the countryside. And when we think about like career options, it's gonna be even more like off-putting. So we see like a rise in rural unemployment because, well, people just don't consume much of things, in the countryside. So there's very few jobs available. Of course, you can still opt for being a farmer, but not everybody wants to be a farmer. It is very laborious. Many people would say it's backbreaking. So it's reasonable. But these days, with all the advances in the agriculture, we can actually do the same amount of work in a much shorter amount of time, and it requires fewer people to actually run a farm. So this actually means that people in the countryside can be self-sufficient, and they don't need to care about the changes in the wider economy, which can afflict city dwellers. But for them, they can still sustain their lives at a subsistence level. And we can see this in the way like countryside residents actually don't need to care much about the food security right now, but city dwellers are really fretting the fact that coronavirus is gonna be lasting for a very long time, and the government is gonna shut down their cities, and they will find it difficult to find food. But well, people in the countryside just don't really care because they can actually sustain their lives. Well, when you think about how difficult it is to find food and how dreadful the virus is, and how much people are fretting the fact that they cannot find food, you would probably agree that this is an indisputable benefit. And when children grow up in the countryside, they may recognize the importance of animal husbandry and the methods of farming, such as crop rotation and irrigation, and they may actually become more in tune with the natural world in the future. It is a very important benefit because these days people tend to take the mother nature for granted, and they just exploit everything that they could. And this poses a threat to the ecosystem, which also governs all lives on Earth, including our own. Many people just don't realize how much they are damaging the ecosystem. Lots of animals are going extinct, and when some certain keystone animals actually go extinct, it causes mass extinction, which is in turn gonna wipe us out. It is very dangerous. So basically, if children are more aware of how much we are damaging the world and how fast we are depleting the natural resources, then we can hope that the future generations are gonna protect the world instead of destroying the world as we know it. So when we think about this, it is obviously very beneficial, right? Well, as I discussed above, there's a disadvantage of living in the countryside, which is the slow pace of life here. But well, I think it is not really something that we need to worry about anymore, because we now have technology like the internet. So children here and residents here can actually learn about the world, and they can read about cultural attractions and museums in the world. So basically they are less isolated from the fast changing world. So it is unreasonable to say that countryside is actually a backwater place where people just don't know much about the world. Right, so I think choosing to live in the countryside is a worthwhile decision. In the future, I am actually going to live in the countryside if I have enough money. right? So, but of course, thanks to the development in modern communications, the risk of being isolated in far-flung communities is actually greatly reduced. So technically, living in the countryside is very beneficial and indeed a worthwhile choice. Alright, so the podcast is actually longer than 10 minutes. I think it is enough for now, and see you guys in the next episode.